country. I'm abandoned.
I am an American, but I have the face of the enemy.
We are Prisoners Without Trial.
Written and performed by
Caitlin Hillis,
Max Barrera,
Candace Maurer,
Logan Eldridge,
and Alexis Hill.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The surprising attack on Pearl Harbor compelled President Franklin D. Roosevelt to ask Congress to declare war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. America was drawn into a global conflict.
The attack mobilized a sleeping nation. Tens of thousands of men volunteered for military service. Remember Pearl Harbor became the rallying cry as Americans prepared to fight a common enemy.
But what did the enemy look like, and what would happen to those people who had the face of the enemy?
Immediately after the attack, the United States government placed restrictions on specific aliens. Germans, Italians, and Japanese were considered enemies. However, restrictions fell hardest on the Japanese because they were clearly distinguishable.
The public and the government had a long legacy of injustice toward the Japanese.
The Naturalization Act of 1790. Citizenship shall be limited to any alien being a free, white person.
the San Francisco School Board decision of 1906. San Francisco schools are segregated based on race. Japanese students are targeted.
The Gentleman's Agreement of 1907, an informal agreement between the United States and Japan to stop further immigration to the U.S.
Alien Land Law Act of 1913. Aliens and other people for citizenship are prohibited from owning agricultural land.
Decades later, prejudice toward the Japanese was still present. In 1941, sensing a possible war with Japan, Roosevelt ordered a secret report on the matter of Japanese loyalty. The Munson Report, given to the president 1 month before the bombing, found that all Japanese immigrants and their American-born children were passively loyal. However, the attack on Pearl Harbor reignited anti-Japanese feelings. Radio, newspapers, and magazines bombarded the public and fueled hysteria.
I am for the immediate removal of every Japanese person living on the West Coast. Herd them up, pack them off, let them be pinched, hurt, and hungry.
A viper is a viper wherever the egg is hatched. A Japanese American born of Japanese parents grows up to be Japanese, not an American.
When are we going to stop soft pedaling on the issue of wholesale internment? When are we going to get tough? When are we going to wake up? Or are we just going to sit and wait for this to happen to us?
Members of the Japanese American Citizens League countered by buying war bonds, donating blood, and pledging loyalty oaths. This was not enough to turn the tide of racism.
I am General John L. DeWitt. The fact that no evidence of espionage has been found only proves how carefully the Japanese conceal their acts of sabotage. A Jap is a Jap. It makes no difference whether he's an American citizen. Therefore, I recommend their removal of every Japanese from the West Coast as a military necessity.
Under increasing demands for removal, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942. This order gave the Army power to assign restricted military areas and to forcibly remove all Japanese living in those areas.
Under the Rural Relocation Authority, 16 assembly centers and 10 relocation camps will be constructed outside the restricted area. Evacuation orders will be posted throughout Japanese neighborhoods. The head of each family will report to the Civil Control Center to receive a family number and a date of departure. Each family may only bring what they can carry. A list of banned items will be posted.
What do you save from a lifetime of memories? We have 3 days to pack. To sell our things, so little time.
White people swarmed our neighborhoods like vultures. They gobbled up our things as though they were worth nothing. Everything is gone. Our furniture, our radio, my dolls, our beautiful home is an empty box.
Ready? No tears. Shugata-gane.
Mama and I gathered at the local church with hundreds of other Japanese families. We waited for buses to take us far from home.
Rose,
Mary, what are you doing here?
I came to say goodbye and give you this. It's a journal so you can write about what happened. There's some stationery and a few stamps in the back so you can write to me.
But I don't know if I can keep it.
Tuck it in that coat.
Mary, you should go now.
Goodbye, Mrs. Shinoda. Goodbye, Rose.
Bye, Mary.
Converted horse stalls at fair racetracks serves as temporary holding centers. Overcrowding and the lack of food and proper sanitation make living conditions deplorable. Internment camps hastily built by the Border Relocation Authority would eventually hold 120,000 Japanese. Most of them were American citizens.
They drove us to camp in cattle trucks and buses. Soldiers with guns and bayonets stood guard. What did they think we were going to do? Run away?
Our new home at Manzanar was completely surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. I've never seen so many Japanese in one place.
I knew the minute we crossed that gate, we had lost something very precious. We were no longer free.
Concentration camps were constructed in the most desolate and remote areas. The internees were completely unprepared for the weather, the lack of simple comforts, and the lack of privacy.
Dear Mary, we arrived at Owens Valley a few weeks ago. Our barrack is small. We have cots and a stove for heat. We share a barrack with another family, the Agawas. Mr. Agawa made us a table and chair out of leftover lumber. Now we can sit down, but we don't eat in the barrack. We have to get in a long line at the mess hall. Mama is quiet. I think she misses her flower garden, like the one back home. I miss San Diego, our school, and you. Right back when you can. Your friend, Rose.
While most Americans accepted Japanese internment, several churches published brochures that proclaimed Japanese loyalty and innocence. The Quakers and the American Baptist Home Mission Society sent packages to the internment camps. These packages brought hope and joy to the internees.
In 1942, the WRA announced it would ask the internees to fill out an application for leave clearance. This form would identify the internees' loyalty. People who give acceptable answers would be allowed to leave the camps for work purposes, for school, or for military service. On February 1st, 1943, President Roosevelt announced the formation of a special unit made up of Japanese Americans, practically reversing his previous actions. Roosevelt stated,
The principle on which this country is formed and by which it has been governed is that Americanism is a matter of the mind and heart. Americanism is not and never was a matter of race or ancestry. A good American is one who is loyal to our country and to our creed of liberty and democracy.
My name is Jack Kanatoni. America is my country. When war broke out, I was ready to fight the enemy, no matter if the enemy was German or Japanese. This is my country, and I'm prepared to defend it.
From May 1943 through February 1944, 33,000 Japanese American men served in the 100th Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. The 442nd became the most honored military unit in history.
You are to be congratulated on what you have done for this great country of ours. You fought not only the enemy, but prejudice, and you have won. You've brought dignity and honor to America, and you've shown your fellow countrymen and families that you are Americans. President Harry S. Truman.
The closing of the camps was a gradual process that began in January 1945 and ended in December. Almost all internees were financially ruined, losing an estimated $400 million in property. Perhaps the most devastating reality was that Japanese were still viewed by many as the enemy.
On November 21st, 1945, Manzanar closed. I got my last letter from Rose. Dear Mary, the gates finally opened. Mom and I packed our things and said goodbye to our neighbors once again. The government gave us $25 and a bus ticket to anywhere. We took a bus to Fresno where we saw signs that said, "No jobs for Japs." We are not wanted in California, so we're moving to New Jersey to live with my uncle. Mama says we must put the past behind us. Forever your friend, Rose.
The signing of Executive Order 9066 set in motion the largest violation of civil rights in American history. The forced evacuation and imprisonment violated their constitutional right to legal counsel,
To a speedy and public trial,
to life, liberty, and property.
to equal protection under the law.
In 1988, after years of campaigning by the Japanese American community, the Civil Liberties Act was signed by President Ronald Reagan.
For the first time, the United States government accepted responsibility of wrongdoing and issued a formal apology. In addition, each surviving internee received a $20,000 payment.
However, our government still struggles to balance national security and our civil liberties. The events of September 11, 2001 led to the detainment of 400 Muslim residents, as well as the passage of the Patriot Act, which directly affects the civil rights of all American citizens.
Mary no more, Manzanar internee said, "We don't have a king. We don't have a queen. We have a constitution. And when we violate the constitution, we will begin to unravel as a nation."
We must never forget the wrong done to those who were
Prisoners without trial.
Quite a performance. And in bibliography, you
Manzanar, the one thing that stood with me the most is when my teacher, she told all of us to go into the open and to feel as if we were in the internment camps. And we were only there for like a minute or two, and I felt lonely and abandoned. And to think that these Japanese American citizens were there for 3 or 4 years, it really touched me the most.
And I felt the sorrow for the Japanese because their living conditions were not so great. They had to use latrines to go into the bathroom, which had no separation, and their beds were made of hay.
One thing that really touched me was their barracks that they were living in. More than one family had to share a whole room. And the barracks were built with green wood, and they have a lot of moisture. So when the wood dried, it shrunk and left spaces in between the two pieces of wood. So dust and dirt would blow in like every day. And that's what we did on our backboard. As you can see, we put spaces in between the boards, and the Japanese would put black tar paper on the back to prevent the dust coming in. So that's what we did to represent the barracks of Manzanar.
I felt bad for the Japanese women that were in the camps because they didn't have privacy. Like in the barracks, they didn't have walls. So kind of like what Logan said, each family had about, I'd say, 10 feet to put their possessions in. So I felt sorry for the women also, like Max said, because of the privacy and the latrines that they had to use. And also the Japanese women had to go to the bathroom at night because they didn't want to be seen.
Like Alexa said, when our teacher told us to go out into the open and kind of feel how it felt, and we were only there for a minute, I felt so much abandonedness and loneliness, and that's what stood with me the most. So I took that away from Manzanar.
Definitely, probably the script, because it was the biggest violation in civil rights. So putting that together in 10 minutes was really difficult. We would memorize one script and then have to just completely forget it and memorize another one. So we would be mostly proud of the script because it finally got to where we wanted it to be.
Who wrote the script?
Well, we all pitched in. We all put our knowledge together to represent a timeline from where we started our research where the white people were against the Japanese.
Who wrote the script?
We all did, all together. And how Max was saying with the white people and the Japanese, all the prejudice, we talked to Dr. Jim George, and he's the UCLA historian, and he said that people would become prejudiced to benefit off the Japanese land because so many white farmers and white people were jealous of the Japanese.
Can each of you go on about some of the ways there's very interesting or intriguing in this process?
Well, we talked to Bob Moriguchi, which we found at the Japanese American National Museum, and he was a docent there, and he told us his story, and he also told us how, as a kid, he thought it was fun to go to the camp, and he felt like it was a camp for kids.
One interview that I took away from doing this project was when we interviewed Don Bender. He's a World War II veteran. He started getting teary-eyed, and he told us about his story, how he killed 2 Japanese men. Like they were on a boat to Japan, and he saw them right there, and he put a bayonet on the end of like a sword, and he
One thing that I also learned is to go back to the prejudice in all the magazines, newspaper articles, and songs that were just offensive to the Japanese. I discovered how many wrong stuff there was about the Japanese and just the terrible prejudice that there was.
Something that I took away from this project was the 2 secret reports saying that the Japanese were loyal, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt, before that he interned them, he knew about these 2 secret reports. And 40 years after internment, a reporter found these reports and put them out to the public. And when the public saw these, the government wrote apology letters to the Japanese and paid the Japanese $20,000 So that's something that I took in because before that they interned the Japanese, they knew that they were loyal to our country.
One of our interviews that we did, I think it was Ken Nishiyama, he said that internment was a good thing for the Japanese because when they went into the camps, most of the Japanese Americans were only farmers, and as they lived their life throughout the camp, they learned to have other occupations.
So it's kind of mixed perspectives because some people did not like the internment camps, but then some Japanese thought of it as protection. Even though they were treated nicely and they had everything that they needed to live, they were surrounded by a fence. They didn't have their freedom to walk around, go to their friend's house, you know. They were enclosed. So even though they were treated nicely, on another side they were still imprisoned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.